Good morning, everybody. I was going to post a teaching post I mentioned last night on my In Pursuit of the Facebook Hacker, Cybersecurity, Russian Collusion. Say, John, are you going to involve us now with all your mob and mafia and hitman and Whitey Bulger? And yes, and in the middle of all that, we got the Facebook Hacker. I think what I'll do is a little rollout. I have the teaching post completed. I added like all the particular text and links a day before. That's actually the post from last Sunday. I already put that video on YouTube, and so it's the Sunday teaching I do. I thought I would read a few verses out of Isaiah, and in my Isaiah, or in my Bible, last night I just wrote down quickly, because we went out last night. So I tried to review some of the mass verses, which will be this coming Sunday. And I'll kind of teach them at my daughter's house along with whatever other church I visit. And I just reviewed them last night. I could teach them now, but I'll wait. But that's kind of like maybe a little preview as well on these rollouts. So that's going to be Ezekiel chapter 18, which is, these will be the Sunday Mass verses coming up on, I believe it'll be October 1st, which is tomorrow. So it's the soul that sinneth, it shall die. This is Ezekiel 18. Through the prophet, God is rebuking the people. They're blaming others for the judgment. The soul that sinneth, it shall die. Then a good chapter, John 10, which, my sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me, and I give unto them eternal life. They shall never perish. No man will ever pluck them out of my Father's hand. In context, it's a chapter where Jesus says, I have other sheep that are not of this fold. He's talking about the Gentiles coming in. Okay? And then a couple of other scriptures that would be dealing with what we're talking about is in the New Testament, in the parables, Jesus is really dealing with the dynamic of the Jewish nation being jealous that the gospel is now going to all these other people groups, all these other nations. So that's kind of a little primer for the next Sunday sermon. I mentioned on the little video I made last night, I got to see my friend Mike yesterday, the artist. But I've been on the streets too. I've been at the park, like for many hours. I go out there and hang out with the guys. And yesterday or the other day, when you're there at the park, it's in public, of course, and there's a lot of people walk by, and sometimes people have issues with other people, but that's nice to be out there, just to be out. So some guy comes out of the woods or the high grass, but from the field. And he's a new guy, and he's Hispanic, he's Mexican. And so he comes up to us. It was just me and really Diane, and then someone else will show up later. George was coming back, which is, fine. And then he walks up and says, oh, can I hang out with you guys? Look, that's normally homeless guys that are new in the street don't just walk up to another group, particularly if there's like a bunch of white people. I don't mind any of that, but on the street it normally don't work that way. Like Flower Bluff, if you're new in town and you just happen to be Mexican, brother, just because of the way things are sometimes, all right? I said, sure, brother, you can sit with us. So I gave him a cigarette and all. But it was strange the way he was asking questions, or supposedly he came from Port Lavaca because the hurricane, he's doing work here. He might have been legit. But then my friend George showed up from getting his beer at the Blue Store, or a place where they buy beer. And then when that guy left, George said, yeah, he was in the store like asking questions in that Blues. So it did look, and I'm just saying that to say this, we're on the street every day. I'm on the street every day. And so there's everything is in the open. So people looking for people, you'd have no problem ever finding me. The Sellis case, which I mentioned, let me bring it up, because yesterday in the newspaper, I guess I'll add some of these links to it, all charges were dropped. And it talked about the money laundering and the history and the 10-year case and everything's now dropped. I mentioned that case. Now, and of course we now have the Facebook attempt. What happened was someone attempted last night, because it came on my phone, showed me. Somebody's attempted to reset your password. Just in general, there's so much. I see friends of mine that get hacked on Facebook and all. But that is a crime. And today with the Russian collusion, I'll do John, but we're not involved with Russia, and we're not. Look, even if the way our country is now, if you even ever ate Russian dressing on your salad, and you are connected with a hacking of the site, that's enough to get you in collusion with the Russians, which means life in prison. Now, the news is so. Listen to me, my liberal friends and my conservative friends. I try to watch world news, ABC, NBC, CBS, World News Tonight, the same news you get in New York that you get. It's such a disgrace. And I'll say this, you say, John, that's because I'm not a big conservative or Trump defender, it's just a disgrace. And so it starts with the issues of the private plane, Tom Price, who now has resigned, health secretary, because, look, of course, they were using money, to take private flights. And as I watch this, and that's really the main coverage, and they're just a political machine. And it's not that I'm just see the liberal bias no, because I'll watch 1 hour of one of the most liberal news shows you can ever watch. It's called Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman. And it's a 1 hour, one of the most liberal, as bad as MSNBC. But what they do is they do their little thing. Sometimes I won't watch the whole hour. But yes, they're super liberal. But they don't waste the whole hour on just silly, stupid stuff. And that's what the world news does every night. And so even though Democracy Now! Is liberal, but then they deal with world issues, which we actually call world news. Whether it's Yemen, whether our involvement in different things, which is supposed to be news. Real things that are concerning nations, how our involvement. So I just would say the regular news is, they have given all a comment real quick. I'm doing news and I don't want to go long. The Caller Times, which I read, look at this. I got many Caller Times. Okay, the last week, they're doing extensive coverage on the border wall. And they're doing entire front page sections. And yesterday, or the Sunday paper, they did, or whatever one it was, I mean, entire pages and pages of why they're against the border wall. Look, and I'm pro-immigrant. Here's one, just front page, tunnels and people. Then you could go, I mean, huge, 80% of their news on all of these. It's basically, I get it, okay? They're advocating for not building the wall. Page after page after page, what it will do. Yesterday, maybe yesterday's it said, and it will force drug smugglers to find other ways. And because if you build a wall, criminal activity, criminals will find other ways to break the law. Look, you could shorten it down. Look, I'm not for the wall. But all of those arguments in the field of we do logic and all of those arguments, I'm pro-immigrant, I don't want the wall. But when you show that if you build a barrier, or other countries that have very strict security of immigrants or whatever, and if you simply are trying to make the point that a physical barrier, which we already have, quote, a wall, fence on parts of the border. I live close to Mexico. If the argument simply is an actual security barrier, whether it's closing the door. I leave my door open all night here. This is a worship and praise. I've even had people say, you leave that door open? Yes. My friends know. I've never been robbed here. But to simply make the point that to have a locked door, what does a locked door on a house do? Does it encourage people to break in through the windows? Does it robbers do all of those things? Would you make arguments that to have, quote, physical barriers of security, whether it be a residence, a city, a nation, is the argument that any actual physical barriers of security, whether it's on stores that we had a credit union just robbed the other day, would you tell the credit unions, the banks, that by having doors and security, you're encouraging criminals to do other illegal acts to rob your bank, which criminals do? So the basic argument that weeks and weeks the animals, I understand all this, you're going to encourage by building the wall. The basic argument simply is, look, I don't want the wall, but you're wasting so much paper, the Kohler Times, on that particular argument. Okay? Simply, Israel, other nations, sometimes barriers are built, whether they are physical barriers. We could also make all that argument on Border Patrol, because to have those that are against the wall, I'm not for the wall. They say, but just have more Border Patrol. But I can make all those same arguments. Don't you think? Say, well, but Border Patrol along the border is causing people to go in other ways, which it does. And they're avoiding the Border Patrol, correct. And then they're forced to do other illegal entries in other areas because they're going away from the Border Patrol. Therefore, let's not have the Border Patrol. Look, people are not stupid. This is why, when you see me post Aristotle and all these, these were the debates in logic that people had. That's why philosophy plays a role in some of the teaching we do, okay? That we try to think through things. So it's just, the media is, I advocate for the immigrant, but the media is just, I think they see, like they look at the public like they're stupid. And the media is, Isaiah 1 in Isaiah, in the later chapters, which I'll read those chapters, it says, the forces of the Gentiles will come unto thee. The forces of the Gentiles. Sometimes I'll see sheriff deputy or cop. I have ways to see who reads the site, which is fine, and I'm glad. And sometimes I'll see, people don't realize that you can tell who's reading your site, which is fine. And there's recently, I think he's a sheriff's guy, maybe out of Nueces County, and I'm glad. But when I read the forces of the Gentiles, people will you want to shine the light, okay? This is one of our purposes. A few brief things. Now later, I might have a friend or two on the video. These are Isaiah 16 through 20. Send ye the lamb to the ruler of the land. I like that. Send ye the lamb to the ruler of the land. The whole principle of the Lamb of God, the kingdom, God's kingdom, and God's authority in the church. In mercy shall the throne be established, and he shall sit upon it in truth in the tabernacle of David. I could do a lot there. Judging and seeking judgment. I have that verse. In mercy the throne will be established. Rule, just rule. After the storm, this is Isaiah 17, they will be gleaning grapes, shall be left in it. As the shaking of an olive tree, 2 or 3 berries, God's judgment. Talks about storms and judgment, all these chapters. At that day a man shall look to his Maker, and his eyes shall have respect to the Holy One. When judgments come, people look to God. That's your only hope. In that day his strong cities will be forsaken. Uppermost branch, which the children of Israel abomination. Few verses. Behold, at evening they will see trouble. Before the morning. There will be no rest when judgment is in a land and in a place. For the Lord said unto me, I will take my rest, and I will consider in my dwelling place like a clear heat. Now in context, this is verse 18, or chapter 18. When the people of God when they didn't take the Sabbath, they didn't let the land rest for Sabbaths, which was a command of God, let it rest, but they worked all those Sabbaths. And then when they were brought into bondage for 400 and something years, all the land finally took its Sabbath rests back. And what God is saying here in this, through the prophet, you didn't honor me by taking rest in my grace, by taking rest in my grace, but you did wickedness, the works of men's hands. Therefore I'll bring a time of judgment, and in that whole period, then there'll be rest. As I watch a lot of the local news, Port Aransas, they're in a lot of trouble in the sense that there's a realization now after the hurricane hit that they're losing people. Some of the kids I'm watching on the news, they relocated to Flower Bluff. Now Port Aransas is about a 20-something minute drive from Flower Bluff, and we are all coastal areas, okay? I'm right off the water here. Port Aransas goes around that way. It's very pretty. And I used to fish with a fireman friend, Terry, and Joe years ago, and there's a spot right out there. But what they're beginning to realize is they're not going to be restored to what they were. Now, some of the kids relocated to Flower Bluff, the school season. They're getting out, and they're going to, a lot of those families, look, the school system here is a good school system. My kids home with Flower Bluff. And they're worried now. Not only are they not going to have the resources because of the tourism economy, which I spoke about, but some of the cities, when they relocate, they're going to be in trouble because those people are going to move. And so they shipped in a bunch of temporary school buildings, sort of like the little portable trailers, houses. We used to have a few of them here in Flower Bluff, but they're getting them all in there because of that reason. They're afraid, look, if the people totally move, and many are going to do that. So they're trying to get all the kids now to come back to Port Aransas for that purpose. Come back to the schools, but the town, it's going to take years. The land has its rest now. I hit on some cases out there, talked about them. They were putting out, these are all the towns that I mentioned a couple years now. They were putting out ice coolers. These things get me mad. And they were planting them as entrapment. And they were just coolers, fishermen's coolers. The local media did something on this. And they put the cooler outside like of a bait store or a little store there in Port Aransas. And people would come in during the day that were fishing and all, and they asked the people in the store, oh, there's somebody left a cooler out there by the dumpster or by the trash, which you would think maybe somebody was going to throw it out. And so people would come in. This was a sting they'd do out in Port Aransas. The cops were doing this. They've got another cop now, the top chief, involved in a very severe crime just the last week. Okay, I saw a friend, Sweet Pea, I saw that link. Thank you for putting that. So then people would take the cooler with somebody, after they go in and ask the person in the bait store or the little convenience store, said, oh, whose cooler is that? And the people in the store knew this was a big sting by the cops. And one guy picked up the cooler, more than one, but one guy picked it up on the way out and said, look, it's here in public. Somebody just left it. As soon as he picked up the cooler, they wait till he put it in his truck. This was just a guy fishing, no record. Cops pulled him over, arrested him. You're going to jail, boy. We just busted your ass. Now, people were challenging that, saying, we don't. That would be like if I put a $10 bill on the ground, in public, just on the street. And if somebody picked that $10 bill up, according to what they were doing out there, you're busted, bro, for theft. So, and they laughed about that. Then they assaulted this kid, illegal arrest, I gave that case, and they laughed. And then you had the DA out of that county, Aransas County, trying to tell one of the cops a few months ago, we're not going to take any more police reports or crimes by your cops. And they laughed, and now they're done. The Port Aransas is done. Aransas Pass used to, when I did those rides over the years, when you go through Port Aransas, it was like a beautiful, beautiful resort town. One of my friends, Casanova, stayed out there. He, homeless guy on the street, Casanova. Loved it. Now he's back. He says there's a war zone out there. The land will take its rest. And then Aransas Pass, when you went into Aransas Pass, it was a little more low class. And as soon as I drove through that town many years ago, I said, this is where I would find some guys I could work with. Not to demean Aransas Pass, but Aransas Pass, which is connected by a ferry boat, okay? Across the little water port there. That was considered low class compared to Port Aransas. Yeah, but the land's taking its rest. Because you thought all those things were a joke. And the chief cop was just caught, the chief of that department, doing things with one of the other officers, and now they're dealing with that. The burden of Egypt, behold, the Lord rideth upon a swift cloud, and shall come into Egypt, and the idols shall be moved at his presence. Judgments that we see, I didn't want to do too much of those. The Lord hath mingled a perverse spirit in the midst thereof. They have caused Egypt here. Look, famous prophecy of Isaiah. This is chapter 20. In the year that Tartan came unto Ashdod, the king sent him. At the same time spake the Lord by Isaiah, saying, Go and loose the sackcloth from off thy loins, and take the shoe off your foot. And he did so. This is Isaiah the prophet, walking naked and barefoot. And the Lord said, Like as my servant hath walked naked and barefoot 3 years for a sign and wonder upon Egypt and upon Ethiopia, so shall the king of Assyria lead away the Egyptians prisoners, and the Ethiopians captives, young and old, naked and barefoot. There will be a judgment upon that land, just like the song of the prophet. And the inhabitant of the isle shall say in that day, those that are living on the coastlands, these can be interpreted in the King James, you got islands, will wait for the law of God. But in other versions it says the coastlands shall wait for this word. The coastlands shall wait for the law. And the inhabitant of the isle of the coastland shall say in that day, Such is our expectation when we flee for help to be delivered. How should we escape? These are just a few verses. I would have gone, I'm already doing like 22 minutes. This is talking about times of judgment in the land. Times of people, it settles in and they begin to realize, we survived. I'm going to show you the video I made during Hurricane Harvey, which was called Lone Survivor. It was a little baby squirrel I found in the yard. I did a video as I was doing those videos during the hurricane. I mean, he was baby. I was lifting up shingles. Well, my daughter, they found a lady that was going to take care of that squirrel. He's now big. My daughters are showing me the pictures of the squirrel. So I notice a mama squirrel has been coming on my fence up to me. And I haven't really had that the last few weeks. And I'm thinking, why is she coming up to me? And I'm thinking maybe it's the mother who saw me rescue her little baby out of the yard that day. Because the mother squirrel, during the hurricane, the little baby squirrel flew out of the tree. And when I was cleaning up, I heard a big squirrel crying. I didn't know why. It's because her baby was in the ground. And then I picked it up. So I think the mama squirrel has been coming by. Because sort of like, where's my baby? Type thing. It could be a different one. But, so I'll roll this right now. I'll do the teaching thing tomorrow. And I've been on the streets with my friends. I've been out there all day. There's no... See, with God, there's all things open with whom we have to do. All the deception people do. That little Facebook thing. People trying to hack in. Become productive in your life. You won't have time for all these little games. And I see all these games in our world affairs right now. The whole thing was there were whole books on the Hillary collusion, the deals, all of the deals they made with the Ukraine, Russia, what is it now? The nuclear, uranium, books on it. Oh, there's so much criminal stuff that was done. Collusion, State Department, all this. I'm no defender of the New Jersey Senator Menendez, who is right now in federal court in New Jersey. Menendez. He's a Democrat, and maybe a lot of Republicans are glad you'll get him. Let me tell you, I remember, that's my home state where I grew up in New Jersey. They did wrong to that Senator Menendez because they got him on certain things that Hillary and Terry McAuliffe and all her people were giving favors, connections, visas, so much corruption when Hillary Clinton was at the State Department. All these speeches to Russia after they made these deals, tenfold more than what you have going on now. But they went after Menendez, and there was set up. There was leaked to the media that he was sleeping with hookers somewhere. They found out that was a lie. That one charge, and all that was when he was voting against Obama on some key issues. So we get so much corruption in this country. And the Mueller investigation. What about Mueller, head of the FBI? He was a good friend of James Comey. This is not just conservative stuff. And James Comey admits he leads the conversation to somebody to get it to the New York Times, which was all, and now we got you. And they raided Manafort's house at 2 a.m., secretive raid, well, though he was cooperating. What you're seeing, even in this country, the things I saw Cheryl Atkinson on TV the other day. Who is she? She was a reporter that Obama and the Justice Department illegally tapped her computers, her home computers and her work computers. Books written on it. She used to be in the, quote, mainstream media. I believe the name is Cheryl Atkinson. Then she found out because she was writing critically, doing True Media. She was part of the Democratic media, liberal media. But because she was actually doing true reporting, which the media was not doing under the Obama administration, the Justice Department and the intelligence agencies illegally were tapping into her computers, doing things to her. They did the same thing with one of the Fox guys. The Fox guys going, those were crimes. And she wrote a book on it. She couldn't believe they got away with it. And she figured once, and it was people from inside the Justice Department that were informing her that the Obama administration and Justice Department under Eric Holder and later Loretta Lynch, that they were doing illegal acts on citizens, surveillance and all. That was a crime, higher than anything Mueller is looking at. How could you say that, Jim? Because it's not a crime for another country to try to influence another country's election. We do that all the time. Even Mark Zuckerberg, who's no conservative, Facebook, he just released this week ads that Russians bought. Oh, to try and influence. Don't ever forget, the way that the Russians, the things that were leaked in media were all true things. Things about what the Clintons were doing to burn Sanders, to burn Bernie. There was enough actual crimes leaked by what the Clintons had done in some of the things I just mentioned. That's what was getting out. That's what the media does all the time. They just don't do it to the side they don't like. And so we're seeing, even on this national level, like the whole country in an uproar, the Mueller and the same exact things. That's why I think the Menendez thing is a joke. Because some of the things that he did, that U.S. Senator Menendez on trial today, going to send in prison, she used his influence about visas and all. There were books written that the Clintons did even worse than that. Even worse than that. All right, let me upload this. This would be like number 2. I'll add the little, we're after the mole. So we get the Facebook mole, Whitey Bulger, Mafia, FB. Oh, we got it all mixed in now. John, I didn't know I was going to get caught up in this. I'm gonna add these Isaiah chapters onto this little rollout today. And maybe you'll see some of my friends today, okay? Let's end with that.